amazing, I think it's incredible that we have, thank you to everybody that has brought this to Ottawa and is making it happen, and all of you for being here, because truly, this city has so many great ideas, doesn't it? I mean, I've heard so many awesome stories today, and I'm honored to be here to be able to share part of mine with you, and I'd like to start, if I could, with this.
It is the most unforgiving place on Earth. Over 3.5 million square miles. A vast wilderness. It is the Sahara Desert, with people and cultures as unpredictable as the landscape.
Running 50 miles a day, it's the challenge, it's going the distance, it's just pushing myself to my limits.
It's never been done. No one's ever run that far in that period of time.
That will be tough. It's a mental thing, I think.
Imagine running 50 miles per day for more than 100 days. In an unprecedented personal challenge, 3 ultra runners, good friends, test physical strength and mental toughness, running across the entire Sahara Desert.
They're such high-end athletes. They're used to pushing themselves, but they're going to be pushing their bodies more than they ever have in the past.
We've had injury, we've had sickness.
Sorry, dude.
The best thing to do would be to stop for the day, but we have to cover some miles today.
Any Americans found there without proper paperwork are going to be considered spies, liable to execution.
You're going to have to make the best decision for us as a team.
It's so difficult for me because the personalities are so different.
I don't want to push us into the ground, obviously, but I'll push us damn close.
This is, a lot tougher than you could have ever thought.
You can do this. You don't want to quit. It's okay.
We saw a young boy, 7 or 8 years old, in the desert alone, fending for himself while his dad was a 2 days walk away to get water. That's the water situation. I mean, it's so much bigger an issue than I would have ever thought.
Narrated by executive producer Matt Damon and directed by James Mall, a personal and compelling journey into the world's most mysterious wilderness.
The purpose of the 3 of us coming here was to learn more about each other, to learn about the people of the Sahara, and to do something that hasn't been done before.
They all 3 agreed that if one runner went down, they would be out of the expedition.
I thought your commitment was different than that.
When is the end?
The end is when we get to Cairo.
When Africa is one, and we sing this song, show me the way home. Go high, show me the way home. It don't hurt no more.
It will be a life-changing experience, and not just for the 3 runners, for everybody who's along on this journey.
So there you have it. On November 1st, 2006, my 2 best friends and I did something that practically everybody in our lives said was impossible, could not be done. We ran across the entire Sahara Desert, from the west coast of Africa to the east coast through 6 countries, 7,500 kilometers. That's basically like running from St. John's, Newfoundland to Vancouver in the sand when it's plus 50 out. A few basic stats on the expedition just to get the ball rolling. So 7,500K. 111 days, not a single day of rest. So that was an average of 70 kilometers, basically, every single day. We had 5 immediate support crew to help us on our way. Probably the most difficult part of the expedition, besides the blisters, was the fact that I had 2 showers the entire time I was out there. So the plus side of that, though, is you're not going to get lost, because, of course, your crew will always find you in a sandstorm when they can smell you, right? But as you heard in the intro, it surprises many people to know and hear that when I stood on that west coast of Africa on November 1st, 2006, and I thought about those 6 countries I was going to run across, I had started running 2.5 years before that day. 2.5 years. And just a few years before that, the greatest adventure I was on was finding the best happy hour I could. I mean, I was a pack-a-day smoker, bag of chips a day, sit on the couch, have a pint of Guinness kind of guy. That's what I did. Very sedentary life. That was until one day in 1998 that changed my life forever. I made a decision that I was no longer happy living the life that I was living. I mean, people say, what was the catalyst? What was the epiphany? I think now, in retrospect, the epiphany was realizing that I was no longer going to feel sorry for myself, because that's where I was. I was so low inside, I just was feeling Like everybody else in my life had gone off on this path, and I was still way over here doing the same things I was doing when I was 16, 17, 18. Nothing had changed, and I'm 30 plus years, right? Where's my life going to go? I made a decision because I was inspired by my younger brother, John, who's a fantastic and amazing athlete. I made a decision that day in 1998 that would change my life forever. I decided that I was going to quit this pack-a-day smoking habit. I was going to live my life more like my brother. I was going to become very healthy because if we treat the temple, well, who knows what else could possibly happen. I had nothing to lose but to try. So that's really where my story begins. Now, I'm a great procrastinator, so I gave myself 2 years to kick this habit, right? You know? So New Year's Eve 1999, I'm smoking that last cigarette right down to the filter. And for the smokers in the audience, if there are any, or the ex-smokers, you know what I'm talking about when you hit that filter and it's like the most terrible drag, but for some reason you take another puff, you know? The band is counting down to the new millennium, and I'm thinking to myself, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to wake up different. And things aren't going to necessarily happen overnight, but one thing will happen overnight. I'm leaving all of the negative baggage, all of the things that I feel so lousy about in my life, I'm leaving them behind me in 1999. And I'm going to wake up on January 1st, 2000, changed. I'm going to look ahead, and as corny as it sounds, and I didn't care, as corny as it sounds, I'm going to live every day like it's my last. It's as simple as that, and do the best I possibly can. That's the deal I made myself. So I did wake up the next day, and something did feel different. Something was superficially different. Now, I spent a couple of years getting in really good shape. But the one sport that my brother did that I absolutely would not follow him out into the woods to do was running. You see, why would you run somewhere when you could drive your car or ride your bike and get there quicker? It made no sense to me, and I could not relate to any runners because I'd never really done any running. Although in these 3 years, from 2000 to 2003, things kept getting better. I was riding my bike every day, I was training with weights, I was eating better. I was treating myself because this was the one thing I could control in my life, right? This was the one thing. I mean, you know, I didn't go to college. I didn't, you know, I mean, this was it for me, right? Well, I felt fantastic. One day, December 2003, I opened up a magazine about outdoor sports, something I was accustomed to by this point, in pretty good shape. I'm reading an article about ultra marathons. These races where people are running greater than the distance of a marathon, which, as we know, is 42.2 kilometers, right? Now, marathon, to me at this point, is absurd. I mean, you know, 42.2, who can run that far, right? They must be like super freaks, right? But in this article, I am reading about people running in a race in the Yukon that's 4 times the distance of a marathon. That's not even the punchline yet. They're running in the middle of February, dragging everything they need to survive in this race behind them in a sled. And they run this race, and when they get thirsty, instead of there being a table with the Gatorade and the whatever on, they got to stop, and then they got to light the stove and attach the fuel, all that, put a pot on there with the snow and melt it. That's in the sled. That's how they get their water. I couldn't believe the people that were living people could do this. I mean, who are these people? I'm flipping through the pages. Last page, I'll never forget it, of this article. There's a picture of a dude standing there under the finish line. Yukon Arctic Ultra Marathon 2003. And he's got this sled tied around his waist, and he's grinning ear to ear. And you know what shocked me about the photo of this person who seemed so regular? He looked regular. He looked normal. He didn't look any different than how I felt I looked. And I thought, wow, these last 3 years have been a crazy trip. But this dude has learned something so significant about himself. He's pushed his emotional, mental, and physical limits beyond anything I've ever felt before. I need to do this. And like a zombie, I closed this magazine. I'm like going to my brother, I'm going to run in this ultra marathon. I told my friends, I even told my chiropractor. They all said I was nuts. Once again, in retrospect, I'm glad they did, you know, because I don't think I would have done it. Well, I'm a non-runner. And anybody will tell you who is a runner. I mean, although I was in great shape from riding the bike and climbing and doing all of these things and paddling, because I even did some adventure racing, running on a day-to-day basis, that's hard on the legs. I would soon find out. But I only had 2.5 months to prepare. Fast forward 2.5 months, I'm standing on the start line of the Yukon Arctic Ultra Marathon, and I've got this yellow plastic sled that I've bought at the Walmart for $10. It's tied behind me with a rope tied around my waist, and I got a borrowed ski jacket from Greg Christie's ski shop down the road in Chelsea, and I look down the start line of this race, and all of a sudden these people don't look so regular anymore, right? flags of different countries and names of companies and all this. I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I got myself into? The gun goes off. True as I'm saying, gun goes off. I start running. Some lady from Spain, I could see the flag. She passed me. She was staring me down like she was going to eat me. It was crazy. Like, these were real runners, right? So I'm left in the dust. Everybody's gone. I'm thinking, well, you know what the deal was? I was going to come out here, do the best I could. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not a runner, you know? If it was a mountain bike race, different story. I'm not a runner. The legs aren't there. So I, start trucking along. I'm thinking I'm going to get 10 miles, maybe 20K down the track. Middle of the night, 80 kilometers. 80K. And I'm dragging my feet through the snow. It's not even the semblance of running. I'm dragging these feet, through the snow, and I'm saying to myself, this is the most horrid experience I've ever had in my entire life. And I stop. I stop and I think to myself, how can I get out of doing this thing? Because I'm no longer having any fun. Now, you see, old Ray was a genius at getting out of doing things, because I could come up with any story I need to get out of a tough situation. So this time I'm thinking to myself, well, I'll save face by going home and telling my bro and telling my family and my friends that a massive bear, a grizzly, came out of the woods of the Yukon and chased me, and I sprained my ankle, and I had to stop. Wasn't able to continue, but I did the best I could. And as I really seriously considered the proposition of telling this absurd story, it dawned on me that I hadn't lived to those words. And really, truly, as much as it sucked, that the sport of running was how I was going to be tested, really pushed to my limits, really see what I was made of. And it's the middle of the night in the Yukon. Like I say, I've never been any place like this in my life. There is something out here that could eat me for sure. I'm being tested out here. Well, then I've got to follow through, at least on the basic. Do the best I could. And I sat there and I thought, you really haven't done the best you can. And if the one thing I'm going to walk away from this race, the same thing that guy learned in that magazine article, is I am going to leave here knowing that I have pushed myself beyond any physical or mental or emotional limit. So I got up. And I thought to myself, I'll go down that track 500 more meters. If that's as far as I can go, and I'm on my hands and knees because my feet are that sore or I'm that cold, I'll stop. But until that point, I'm not stopping. So I did that, this sucks, dragging each foot through the snow, and kicking the snow because I was angry, actually. 500 meters turns to 5K. And at that point now, I've got this crazy tunnel vision thing happening, right? And all I'm focused on in the middle of the night is getting down this trail, getting across the next lake, getting to the next tree. Go as far as I possibly can. Push myself. Nothing else matters at this point. It all has fallen away. The focus was so conscious, although I was almost in a semi-conscious state, I just needed to go as far as I possibly could. Well, the next thing I realize, it's light out. Sun's coming up. And in front of me, not that far away, and fast approaching, is the finish line, Yukon Arctic Ultra Marathon 2004. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm coming to, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is crazy. And I'm running. I'm running flat out, and there's no pain in my body. As a matter of fact, I feel better in this exact moment than I've ever felt in my entire life. I truly knew what it felt like to exceed any limit I thought I had. As a matter of fact, I coined a term in that exact moment as I was running to that finish line. I thought to myself, you know what? This isn't physical. It's 90% mental. The other 10% is all in my head. That's what this gig is all about. And I ran underneath that finish line, and I slumped, because then, of course, I realized how exhausted I was and frost-covered. And this race organizer comes out of this cabin that was near the finish line. He says to me, shocked look on his face, you finished the race. And I interrupted him. And I said, dude, you think you're surprised? You have no idea how surprised I am. He said, well, this will knock your socks off. You won the race. And I said, what? Never in my life had I won anything physical. Never in my life had I felt so good. Ironically, a sport which I hated 24 hours before was now going to be the vehicle by which I learned great things in life, right? I decided that if it was running that was going to give this to me, I was going to drink from that chalice every day. I was going to enter every one of the toughest races on the planet and see, push myself, limits, endurance, pain, fear, all of it, and see what else there was to learn about myself. That would eventually lead me to the Sahara Desert. Many times, actually, before running across the entire thing. We came up with this concept of running across the entire Sahara. Where that would lead me, I had no idea when we started out on the west coast of Africa. Let me explain. You saw a documentary film crew that captured this project. Well, the documentary film crew also captured not us just running across these sand dunes and thousands of miles of Sahara day to day with blisters and dysentery and well, gosh, I mean, physically, I lost 40 pounds doing this expedition. Sure, they got all of that running stuff in there. But what they also captured was the people of Africa, these incredible people in Mali, Niger. They captured how we learned the seriousness of the water crisis in northern Africa. I mean, you know, these communities, these people are the most generous, kindest, giving people I've ever met in my entire life. People who would give the food from their mouths for fear that we wouldn't make it to the next community. These people, by our economic standards, who have so little, in so many ways had so much, but they lack this, clean drinking water. Now, without getting too much into it, because I don't have as much time as because you can tell I can talk forever and ever and ever, suffice to say there are very serious water issues. And you know, when we completed this expedition, when we finally reached the Red Sea, and we knew these stories of all of these incredible people that we met, by day 111, the reasons why we were running, there was, you could say, a shift, an evolution to the reasons why we were running. There was no doubt for me, there was no doubt whatsoever that I would leave Africa with a completely new mantra to my running, a complete new philosophy. Young people are the ones that are affected the most by most of the social and environmental issues that we see, right? Agreed? Poverty, AIDS, lack of clean drinking water, all of these things. As a matter of fact, just on the drinking water subject, in our country, many of our First Nations have equivalent water quality to what I was seeing in Niger. Let's think about that. That's pretty crazy, right? Not only are young people, and let me be more specific even, education. Children in northern Africa don't go to school in many of these communities that don't have easy access to clean drinking water because they spend their days walking to bring water to their families from the closest access point. So they don't have dreams, they don't have hopes. I left Africa with two things. A knowledge that if somebody 7 years ago who was sitting on a couch smoking a pack of cigarettes a day could eventually put their hands into the Red Sea and run across the Sahara, that we're all capable of doing extraordinary things. We're all capable of doing things well beyond what we think we're able to. I was living proof of that. I'm just some regular bozo who started running, and here I am, right? The only thing that stands in the way of us completing our dreams and making things happen or completing goals in our lives is ourselves. So I left confident. And this was the second thing I left with, this idea. And I said to my wife, who's like my best friend and my partner and everything, I said, we need to do something. You know, we need to do something about everything that we've learned. We decided, and I mean, it's one of those funny things that you figure out. The audience who was the most attracted to the things I was doing, and there was many expeditions after this, were young people. Schools, classrooms, they loved it. I mean, you know, I would run through a part of Canada, and then that would be the topic in a classroom discussion, would be the areas that I've ran. So we decided, what if we created an organization? We created an organization that nurtured this concept, that in fact the impossible is possible. Nurture within young people what I'm learning at this age. They get to learn 14, 15, 16 years old. They got this whole world in front of them. But also, it's their job. They're the stewards of this planet and the people. What if we could, in young people, not only share our adventures, but give them an educational experience on various social and environmental issues which would want to make them go out and make a difference in their communities and around the world? We said, okay, let's do this. But let's do it with a really cool expedition. No pun intended. Something that young people could really sink their teeth on. So we polled. We polled schools and classrooms. Said, where should we go next? What should we do? South Pole. Top of the bottom of the world. This is where you guys should go next. But don't just go there. Let's do something really cool. Let's make it fast. Let's be the fastest ever. And invite these students to participate and be part of our team, our world record team. So that's exactly what we did. Kevin Vallely, Richard Weber, and myself trekked unsupported. Basically, we dragged everything we needed in these sleds, 170 pounds plus of food and gear, across Antarctica to the geographic South Pole in 33 days, 23 hours, and 55 minutes. Very proud to be Canadians doing that. Precarious crevasse crossings, 50 degrees below zero, temperatures, and of course, as you can imagine, much, much more that would make it difficult. The coolest part of this expedition was the fact that we were able to share our expedition day to day with thousands of students that would follow us on a website which our organization created. This website was loaded with educational material, ranging in topics from climate change to dinosaurs in Antarctica to human physiology to history. Shackleton's adventure, for example, or Scott expedition. The website was also a two-way street of communication, and this is what's awesome. Students were able to ask us questions, and daily, after each day, we would respond with voice files on our website answering the question of the student and the school. It truly was an experiential, interactive concept. And I mean, the brilliance of some of the questions that we were getting, we were able to share with them from the beginning of the expedition on this website to the end and really make them active team members. We talked about packing gear, loading it up, taking it to South America. What we were going to eat. I mean, you know, you're going to burn 8,000 calories a day. Yes, that is butter. And that is what we would eat, you know, our entire journey on top of this gorgeous cake, which in fact was basically sugar, flour, rum, and fruit. I underline the word rum, you know. But, you know, involved in every aspect of the planning of the expedition. The weighing of the gear, you know, packing it. When you're going to ride on the most expensive jet in the world with the least luxurious accommodations to get yourself to Antarctica, every ounce counts. And trust me, we do these things on a shoestring. We could not afford to get all of our gear to Antarctica. So we would poll students, what can we take? What should we eliminate? Really was an awesome, awesome experience from that perspective. When we reached Hercules Inlet, where frozen ocean meets land, we would begin our trek. We were dropped by a great Canadian plane called the Twin Otter. Check out that Canadian flag. In front of us lay 10,000 feet of altitude and 1,100 kilometers to the geographic South Pole. What's incredible about the South Pole is you don't need a compass. You don't need a GPS. It's very easy to find your way to the South Pole. You just have to go uphill for 1,000 kilometers, follow your shadow because the sun's doing one of these in the sky at the time of year when we went, and make sure your face is directly into the wind because you see the catabatics coming off the South Pole are blowing due south. Every day, as I said, we were communicating with students. One of our favorite questions, where did you guys sleep? Because, of course, it can get very windy when you're on Antarctica. Check this out. Oh, there we go. Winds were consistently 100 kilometers an hour plus. I mean, you know, we had this low tent, which was basically our base of operations. It's where we lived. Not only the winds are the winds critical in dealing with on Antarctica and the temperatures, you know, you can see our faces covered here, and there's an automatic assumption every time people see these photos that because of the wind, that's why we had our faces covered. In fact, there's this huge hole in the ozone right above Antarctica where we would be trekking, and the burns that you could sustain if you didn't have every part of your face covered really makes you think, wow, you know, without that bit of ozone, without that little protective barrier up in our atmosphere, we would be fried. Miles and miles of sastrugi, miles and miles of frozen snowdrifts, which we would cross. Again, sharing these experiences with the young people. Oh, there's one story that I just absolutely love. A group of students in northern Ontario dragging sleds around, this was an elementary school, dragging sleds around their schoolyard pretending to be Richard, Ray, and Kevin, taking on the experience. Teachers creating routes, and each route having a different educational point in the schoolyard for these kids to trek around. It was amazing. It really, those stories are what kept us going. I mean, even on the days when we were our most exhausted, we could never wait to get back to the tent. I mean, you always were very excited to get into the tent to get cozy and warm as warm can be, and light that stove and get the food going. But really, truly, it was as well so that we would have our time to communicate with the students. Food, again, as you saw, we had our fantastic meal here. This is coconut milk and potatoes and pemmican. And we would put this over a pasta. That's about 1 billion calories. And then you add another quadrillion calories with the bacon and double deep fried and smoked with butter. I'm not recommending this diet to anyone, you know. One of the students' favorite photos. This is favorite photo number 2. And this tied in perfectly with the question, how do you guys get along? You're squished into that little tent for 33 days wearing the same underwear. You never change. You must be at each other's throats. As a matter of fact, if your teammate is going to have to put a needle into a very infected blister and drain it at some point, you all better get along very, very well. And get along we did. I mean, we really, truly had a lot of fun and laughed quite a bit on this expedition because you have to. This was favorite photo number 1, our little Russian cosmonaut that dragged our sleds to the South Pole. Day-to-day communication, day-to-day inspiration. It was a two-way street, and as I said, we thought that we were going to be the inspirers. In fact, we were the inspirees. That was such a powerful thing to learn. I mean, on this incredible journey, on this incredible trek to share these experiences, but really, truly reach the South Pole and know that without these young people, without their daily stories, the things we were in, without their daily advice, you could almost call it, a daily dose of inspiration, we would have never accomplished this. So we're standing at the South Pole, right? Canadian flag unfurled, and I'm standing beside these two guys, and once again, I'm almost in disbelief of what we had done. It was just a few days shy of my 40th birthday, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I mean, where my life has gone in these last years. I'm standing here today with my two buddies, plus thousands of young people, our teammates. What an incredible journey. And then right away my brain was going, but how can we make it even more of an experience? How can we share this and make it even more palpable for young people? Well, my wife, who is, as I said, a genius, came up with the idea of extending our offering through the Impossible to Possible expedition, or the Impossible to Possible organization. Let's create a series of adventures, groundbreaking adventures, where we invite 5 students, which we select from various areas. On this last expedition, which I will tell you about, these 5 students came from across North America. Bring 5 students with us, so that instead of Richard, Ray, and Kevin sharing their stories on a day-to-day basis, answering questions also about the educational modules, have these 5 do it, peer-to-peer. And these 5 brilliant young people who came from Rankin Inlet to Riverside, California, 4 young women, 1 young man, just a month and a half or so ago, crossed Baffin Island, unsupported, carrying everything they needed. This was their expedition. We were there as a safety net and followed along as we learned about climate change and issues affecting the people of the North that are climate change associated or changing environment. This was Baffin Island, the Akshayuk Pass. And you can see here, this is just a video clip of the expedition and gives you a bit of a feel of what these students saw day to day. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, super fast melt. The glaciers, I've been here twice, and the glaciers were actually considerably smaller. A lot of bog. As you know, the tundra is melting. This area, it's very soft. Canadian icon, that's Mount Thor. You can see our group here trekking through the moraine. Really give it, and day to day, as I said, 5,000 students a day. They're blogging to them every single day, uploading photographs, telling stories. Questions would come through, they'd answer the questions. It really was an incredible experiential learning process with this. So, being able to share, that's what this comes down to. And truly, when this team, this amazing team came together, when we arrived, it was basically the near end of our expedition, the Arctic Circle. It was about 20 kilometers past the Arctic Circle where we finished this expedition. I reflected back on the previous 2 expeditions. When I was at the Red Sea, this notion of us being able to achieve such incredible things and do such amazing things that we never thought possible in our lives. And then to reach the South Pole and think to myself, wow, I'm 40 and I'm doing this stuff. Imagine being 14 and knowing that we have this whole world in front of us. And to see these young people and to see in this incredible place them experience the same things that I had experienced in these previous 2 expeditions. For their faces to light up and to see from the start of the expedition to the end, the confidence, the shift that had happened in their minds, and the shift that they'd caused in many minds that have followed them their entire expedition. To know, without doubt, that in fact they realize from their own version of South Pole expedition that they have achieved something that's impossible in their lives. That truly, they, from that day forward, would be freed from all boundaries. That was the icing on the cake. So, thank you very much. Thank you.